One of the downsides to being a random dipshit YouTuber is that I don't get early copies of games, so by now all of you have hopefully bought Metroid Dread and know that it is very good. It's not very often that Nintendo releases a Metroid game that can be said to be very good without having to soften it with some sort of qualifier, and the fact that this game also happens to be the long-rumored, almost mythical Dread pushes this over the top as one of the high points in Metroid's 35-year run. There's no mistaking that Dread was made by the same team as Samus Returns, which was a middling entry, but there's more confidence and clearly a much higher budget this time. A little blandness still remains in the world design, mostly in the samey metallic corridors that make up the early game, but the overall level of polish and detail is pleasantly surprising. Samus has never had a cooler design than the new power suit, and the animations and camera work frame her as a bigger badass than ever. The background is used more effectively than in any Metroidvania I've played, whether it's to stress the danger a new environment poses or to hint at the presence of an important power-up. The lighting especially is incredibly well done, and the side-scrolling perspective allows rooms to be very specifically crafted to look great from that one angle. I generally don't like the look of 3D side-scrollers, but Dread is one of the few that leaves me feeling that sprites wouldn't have been as good. They even managed to make chromatic aberration look alright. It's easily one of the best-looking Switch games, and it doesn't disappoint as the first HD Metroid. Unfortunately, the music does. A lot of it sucks in my opinion, often sounding like scrapped Luigi's Mansion tracks done on a Casio keyboard. I give the game credit for not relying heavily on remixes this time. The Norfair theme has been driven far into the ground by now, and it's a relief that they didn't recycle it again, but it still sounds like they're trying to recreate the vibe of Norfair and ending up with the generic off-brand version instead. There are good themes for some areas, and the score is only a letdown because the series has had such a long history of strong music. Even some of the most mundane side area themes in older games generate more atmosphere than the best Dread tracks, so it may not be bad, but it might be the weakest soundtrack of the mainline Metroids. Even Other M at least had some high production orchestral arrangements that were pretty impressive. I wish Kenji Yamamoto were still creating the music instead of only supervising it, because it's just not up to the level of everything else the game is doing. Thankfully, in almost every other way, Mercury Steam nailed it. The action is better than ever due to Samus having the fullest arsenal of abilities yet. Every classic power-up returns alongside new moves that enhance your mobility. The pace is improved by sliding under small gaps instead of using the morph ball. Attacks can be dodged with a rapid dash, and the speed booster returns in all its glory. After its absence in Samus Returns, it's doubly clear how important the booster and shine sparking are to the feel of Samus as a character. There are so many more possibilities with these power-ups in the game, and Dread isn't afraid of pushing their usage to extreme levels. The game is full of complex, multi-room puzzles that require not only a mastery of shine sparking, but also a lot of forethought about where the hell to even begin from. Getting 100% completion is harder than in any game aside from maybe Zero Mission, but it remains fair and is completely possible without a guide. The game leaves no doubt that it was designed for the most hardcore fans, and it was designed pretty damn well. The melee attack is better integrated into the combat and doesn't feel broken this time. Enemies fake you out and make the counter timing harder to judge, and the penalty for missing seems more severe. The game not only allows you to melee when running or jumping, but often requires it in order to take an enemy out effectively. They made the mechanic more challenging to master while also making it more fluid and less disruptive to your momentum, directly addressing the complaints most people had about it in Samus Returns. The only real problem I have with the basic movement is that the analog stick sucks for 2D Metroid. We all know this, and it sucked in Samus Returns as well. It's different here because the higher difficulty and the inclusion of shine sparking provide more opportunities for the stick to register the wrong input. It's a necessary compromise because the game needs analog control for aiming, and I do think that mechanic is a worthwhile addition, but it feels like there had to be a better solution than this. There's no analog movement, for example. Tilting the stick even a small amount results in a full run, which is a waste of one of the few advantages stick-based movement should have. I wanted to test if there was some way for D-pad controls to have worked. I used Steam to map the D-pad as an analog stick in Samus Returns, and unsurprisingly it feels great to move that way. The problem is that switching your thumb back to the actual analog stick to aim is very clumsy and fatiguing, to the point that it ends up feeling more cumbersome than just using the stick for everything. It might have been possible to keep your thumb on the D-pad by handling aiming with the gyro, but a lot of people would have hated that because, you know, motion. No matter how, it would have been great to have some way to use the D-pad, even just temporarily, to handle the shine sparking sections. There's only one action mapped to the pad, and if they had put it on D-pad up, you still could have moved left and right and entered the morph ball. Putting that aside, Samus still feels more powerful and acrobatic than before, and the enemies are balanced to match. This is by far the hardest Metroid, and I probably saw the game over screen well over 100 times before I was done. All of the bosses provide a steep challenge, and most of them took at least a few tries for me to clear, but none of them ever felt cheap. They can be hard enough that the first time around you may feel like the fight is impossible, but with every attempt you'll make major progress, and in just 3 or 4 tries you can have the fight mastered. The game does an excellent job of rewarding your effort, and most of the power-ups in the game are well earned through these kinds of struggles. And one of the best parts is that the game doesn't rely on past enemies. Aside from Kraid, who was shown off in the trailers, pretty much every boss is a new design. The final boss may be the best finisher a Metroid game has ever had, and it's all the better for being something completely original and not Ridley for the 8th time. The Emmy robots also provide a new kind of challenge, even if they're rooted in Fusion's SAX. They expand on the idea of an unkillable enemy that you have to run from, but they push it much further. You have to escape through larger areas that you're completely unfamiliar with, frantically taking every chute or door you come across to escape without a second thought. The new cloak ability gives you an opportunity to use stealth, but it has to be carefully timed and is still nerve-wracking in its own way. After being terrorized by each robot for a while, you're given the gift of a super laser that blows their heads off, which is another example of the great sense of reward the game has. But even then, the danger is still very high and you have to choose the right time and place to begin charging. It adds some amazing intensity to the game without derailing the normal Metroid gameplay, and for the most part is a successful addition. No! God, no! No. But there is one section that breaks down and briefly ruins the game for me. After getting killed by the drones a few hundred times, the fear does wear off, and as your mobility improves, they become less and less intimidating. The game responds to this by trying to force every possible cheap trick at once with the last drones, giving them the ability to hear you from any distance, see you through walls, shoot you through walls, freeze you in place, and on top of everything else, you're forced underwater before getting the gravity suit. The only way to survive is to use your cloak ability, but it doesn't last very long and will not recharge until you start moving again, meaning that you have to take a step and attract the drone before the bar will refill. And the bar has to completely refill before you can activate it again, meaning that you'll be exposed for a long while trying to make a sluggish escape to a safe area. And there really is no safe area to hide if the drone is locked on, since it will kill you while you're still cloaked. It will hover around in an unfairly persistent way even when you've been completely silent. I thought I could make noises in one spot to lure it in and then activate the cloak to slip away to a different location, but no. It will still follow you instead of taking the bait, even though by the game's rules you should be all clear. Apparently you can sequence break and get the gravity suit early, but in my experience, playing as intended, the only way through this segment was to pull off a few consecutive melee counters. Instead of making the drone intimidating again, it just made it feel really frustrating, and I think it would have been better to just drop the concept and omit the last drones, rather than trying to force the idea to work after it had run its course. The upside here is that it's extra rewarding when you finally blow this particular asshole away. As mentioned earlier, most major power-ups are earned either by fighting enemies like this or finding secret rooms, and that's great. The game even has built-in rewards for sequence breaking, with mechanics that can only be taken advantage of by getting an item early. There are some slight nitpicks about how the expansions are found, but nothing that really matters. It seems like they're either completely obvious and out in the open, just waiting for you to get the right power-up to grab them, or they're the most deviously hidden Shinespark puzzles possible. There's not much in between. Rooms that still have undiscovered power-ups will glow on the map, and there were surprisingly few of these glows over the course of the game. The majority of power-ups will be seen and marked on your map the first time you pass through an area, leaving very little that needs to be uncovered, and that's kind of disappointing. One of the most surprising things about the game is how hands-off it is when it comes to the exploration and power-up usage. There are tutorials that cover the basics, but they don't tell you everything a power-up can do, and the game will trap you in certain areas until you figure out a new way to use your abilities. This is straight out of Super Metroid, and it was kind of shocking to see a modern Nintendo game test the player like this. There are no objective markers this time, and you're rarely given much direction. Adam may point you to a certain sector, but that's about as much help as you get. There are a lot of environmental puzzles that have to be solved through intuition, like following a lava pipe to find the terminals it leads to, and the game never states the obvious or beats you over the head with the answer. It basically does just what fans have wanted the series to do for years and lets you figure it out for yourself. That alone doesn't mean the exploration is all good, though. There's a reason Nintendo has relied on objective markers so much in the recent games, and that's because intuitively leading the player around a world is really hard. This game's approach is to lean heavily on a new feature that lets you see every instance of an obstacle type on the map. These markers are a great idea, and they make it far more convenient to backtrack to earlier areas. The problem is that you don't really know when you're supposed to backtrack, or which sector to backtrack to. There may be dozens of obstructions highlighted all over the world at any moment. Shortly after entering the third zone, there's a dead end. The game wants you to return to a previous area, but gives no indication of it other than one obstacle marker that happens to be near the shuttle. I always like to check if I'm just a dumbass or if this is a real design problem, so I watched a couple Let's Play videos and all of them struggled in that same spot.
What? Can I even get out of here? Okay, it's a thermal door. I don't think they want us to backtrack so soon.
Alright. What? Yeah, I mean, I guess I could go all the way back to the previous zone, but it feels like I should still be here.
Ideally, the world leads players where they need to be on its own, but it's not over the line to give the player a small nudge in situations like this. Prime gave the player alerts about odd activity in order to steer them back to old areas, and that was fine. Instead, I wasted a lot of time and had to give up in order to figure out that it was time to go back. Dread does this a lot and yanks you back and forth between zones more than any past game. Even if you just entered a new area, within minutes you're jumping into elevators, trams, and teleporters to revisit the old ones, using the process of elimination to check every marked obstruction in every area of the map until you find the one that leads forward. It feels kind of like hunting the last remaining missile tanks in older Metroid games, where you have to comb every inch of the world looking for that one thing you missed. You don't have much forward momentum as a result, and in a way it still feels like the developer is controlling you. They may not be putting a giant beacon on the map, but they're still reducing your agency to explore in some way by forcing such a haphazard and broken path through the planet. Those obstruction markers are dangerously close to becoming objective markers. They also do gate off certain areas to prevent backtracking, either with sealed doors or falling debris. It's nowhere near as bad as other M or Fusion, and you can eventually clear these obstacles yourself later in the game, but they're still interfering with your ability to backtrack to a small extent, and it doesn't seem necessary. None of these are major problems, but I did want to note the faults because indies have done incredibly well with world design lately, and compared to the best Metroidvanias, I think actual Metroid is still a little behind the curve. Thankfully, they don't gate 100% item collection until the last minute this time. Fusion started this trend by locking all of the sectors and only allowing you to return to them after getting the screw attack right before the final boss. It kind of made backtracking feel pointless because all of your effort would only be useful for one fight. Other M literally didn't let you collect 100% until after you had beaten the game. Samus Returns also gated a lot of items behind webbing that could only be removed by a Metroid. Dread doesn't do any of that shit. The few aforementioned obstructions aside, you're free to backtrack and collect items whenever you want. And that matters a lot, because this is a harder game where you'll want those expansions for everything you're doing, not just the final boss. The length feels just about right at about 10 hours, and that was with 100% item collection. It's not a long game, but it isn't short, and it ends while it's still fun. I've used a lot of superlatives while describing it, mostly good. It's the hardest Metroid game, it has the best action, the best villain, and that reflects the quality of work that Mercury Steam put into this. Since Dread released, a lot of information has begun surfacing about how shitty the company apparently is to work for, with anyone contributing for less than 25% of the total development time left out of the credits. There are workers who reportedly put as many as 11 months into the game without receiving credit, and that seems to be among the most minor of the accusations so far. The general culture created by the management seems to be one of intimidation and coercion, so the fact that the developers managed to pull off a Metroid that exceeds the past games in so many ways while working under those conditions is commendable. It's certainly not the first time a great Metroid game came from a toxic work environment. I have my pedantic little list of faults, but very few of them stopped me from enjoying Dread, and I would easily put it above Fusion, Zero Mission, and Samus Returns. I still think Super Metroid has the best world and atmosphere of the 2D games, but there's no shame in falling short of Super Metroid. If you need a number put on it, I'd give it a 9, which may be a little inflated, but as far as I care, the game and its staff deserve the tilt. And so now you know what you have to do. Buy it. You should already have done that. If you haven't, put your dipshit money in your little dickhead pockets and go to the store and say, "One Metroid, please." They'll do the rest. A lot of publications ran articles about how easy the game is to emulate. That's great, and I look forward to emulating it myself down the road, but support the fucking game first. MSN linked to a ROM download right in their article. No, fuck you, buy the game. Nintendo fans always talk about how they want more Metroid, but they seem to disappear when one finally comes out. This is a rare chance for Metroid's commercial success to finally match up with the critical success, and Nintendo might become inclined to give us more than one game a decade. So pretty please, with sugar on top, buy the fucking game.
No, it's bullshit. They don't treat the workers right. Why should I buy their game?
You don't buy the game, I don't buy you.
What? The fuck does that even mean?
You don't buy the game, I don't buy you.
Why are we all pointing guns at each other?
I wasn't gonna buy it either way. No one's losing money here.
Yeah, damn it! I don't even know what a Metroid is!